If you walk in and people don't get uncomfortable, you're just part of the furniture. Most people are scramblers. They smile too fast, talk too much, and practically beg to be noticed. Machiavelli knew that the world only respects what it's afraid to lose. If you look like you need their approval, they'll never give it to you. To own the room, you have to own yourself. Today, we're stripping away the weakness. We are going to master the 4 pillars of the crown: your mind, your mouth, your moves, and your money. If you can't control these, you aren't a king. You're a target. The first thing is to realize that your head is a battlefield, and right now, you're losing. Most people walk around with their gates wide open, letting every insult, every bad news clip, and every toxic friend set up camp in their brain. If you can't control your thoughts, you're not a king. You're a colony. Machiavelli taught that a prince must always be thinking of war, especially during times of peace. This doesn't mean being a paranoid wreck. It means being the only person in the room who isn't a puppet. Imagine you're at work or in a social circle, and someone drops a subtle, backhanded compliment. They're testing your walls. They want to see if they can make you flinch, stutter, or get defensive. Your instinct is to explain yourself or fire back an insult to win the moment. Stop. The moment you react, they own you. They've successfully moved into your head and started rearranging the furniture. You've just handed a peasant the keys to your kingdom. To build a fortress, you have to become emotionally bulletproof. You treat every piece of information, whether it's a jab at your ego or a crisis at work, as cold data. Nothing more. When that person insults you, you don't get angry. You look at them with the same curiosity you'd use to look at a bug on a windshield. You analyze why they said it. Are they threatened? Are they desperate? By the time you've analyzed them, the insult has lost its power. You haven't just defended your mind, you've mapped theirs. You solve the problem of emotional manipulation by refusing to be a participant in their drama. You turn their attack into a diagnostic tool. A king's mind is a black box. Nobody should know what you're thinking, what you're planning, or what gets under your skin. If they can't find the door, they can't break in. You might be facing a massive failure. Maybe a project flopped or you lost a chunk of money. The commoners around you are panicking, looking for someone to blame, or crying about fairness. You sit in the middle of the chaos like a stone. You don't vent. You don't complain. You don't seek closure. You go internal. You figure out the next move while everyone else is still mourning the last one. You get out of the trap of panic by realizing that emotions are expensive, and you can't afford to waste them on things that don't pay. You have to curate your inner circle like a high-security prison. If someone constantly brings you gossip, drama, or worries, they are a breach in your security. They are polluting your well. Machiavelli warned that he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is the ruin of himself. If you let someone else's anxiety become your anxiety, you've surrendered your crown. You must be ruthless with who gets your attention. If a thought doesn't make you stronger, smarter, or richer, delete it. The ultimate power move is total detachment. You care about the result, but you never care about the person trying to stop you. When you have a fortress of the mind, you can walk through a storm of hate and not get wet. You see the traps before they're set. You hear the lie before it's finished. You stay cold, you stay calculated, and you stay in control. Because the second you let someone else dictate how you feel, you've handed them the keys to your kingdom. You solve the problem of outside influence by being your own highest authority. The second thing is to acknowledge that your tongue is a blade, and most people are accidentally stabbing themselves with it every single day. We live in a world where everyone is obsessed with being heard and speaking their truth. That is peasant logic. A king knows that the more you speak, the more common you appear, and the more targets you give your enemies to hit. Machiavelli noted that a ruler should be a great feigner and dissembler. This doesn't mean you're a liar. It means you are a vault. You don't speak to express yourself. You speak to achieve a result. If your words aren't moving a chess piece, keep them behind your teeth. Imagine you're in a tense situation at work or in a negotiation. The other person is pressuring you for an answer, or maybe they've just insulted you to see how you'll react. Your heart starts racing. Your ego screams at you to defend yourself, to explain why you're right, or to fire back a witty comeback. Kill that impulse. The second you start explaining yourself, you are submissive. You are literally pleading for the other person to understand and validate you. You've just handed them the crown. To get out of this trap, you use the most lethal tool in your arsenal: silence. You look them in the eye, you don't blink, and you say nothing. You let the silence sit there like a heavy weight. Usually the other person will get so uncomfortable that they'll start babbling just to break the tension. They'll reveal their secrets, their weaknesses, or their true intentions just to stop the quiet. You solve the problem of being pressured by making the pressure their problem, not yours. A king's words should be like gold, rare and high value. If you're the loudest person in the room, you're the most vulnerable. Machiavelli warned that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs. If you tell everyone your plans, your dreams, and your next moves, you are giving them the map to your downfall. You're at a party or a meeting and someone asks, "So what are you working on lately?" Your instinct is to brag, to show off, to feel important. Don't. You give a vague, boring answer. You deflect the question back to them. People love talking about themselves more than they love anything else. By letting them talk, you gather intelligence while keeping your own cards hidden. You solve the problem of being sabotaged by ensuring no one knows what you're actually building until it's too late for them to stop it. You must also master the art of the calculated no. Most people are yes men because they are afraid of conflict. They agree to things they hate just to be liked. A king knows that every yes to someone else is a no to himself. When someone asks you for a favor that doesn't serve your kingdom, you don't make up a long, rambling excuse. Excuses are for servants. You give a short, direct no. If they push, you don't get angry. You just repeat yourself. You get out of the trap of being used by others by realizing that you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you spend your time or your energy. Your mouth is the gatekeeper of your life. If the gate is always open, anyone can walk in and trash the place. Finally, remember that once a word leaves your mouth, you can never take it back. In the heat of an argument, you might want to say something truly cutting to win the fight. Machiavelli said that injuries ought to be done all at one time. If you're going to strike, strike hard, but never do it out of anger. Anger is a leak in your power. If you insult someone because you're mad, you've created an enemy for life for a 5-second hit of dopamine. That's a bad trade. If you need to remove someone, do it coldly. You solve the problem of unnecessary enemies by keeping your mouth shut when your blood is hot. You wait until you're calm, then you use your words like a scalpel, not a club. By the time they realize they've been cut, you're already across the finish line. The third thing is to admit that if your enemy knows your next move, you've already lost the war. Most people move like they're panicked, running from one thing to the next, reacting to every email, every text, and every perceived slight. Machiavelli knew that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that they never see the trap until the jaws snap shut. If you want to act like a king, you have to stop moving like a target. You don't move because you're scared. You move because it's time to strike. Imagine you're in a professional setting where someone is clearly trying to sabotage you. They're forgetting to invite you to meetings or accidentally CCing the boss on your mistakes. Your natural instinct is to run to HR or start a loud confrontation in the hallway to clear your name. Stop. That is a peasant move. It makes you look weak, emotional, and reactive. You've just shown your enemy exactly where your buttons are. To get out of this trap, you do the opposite. You stay perfectly still. You don't complain. You don't even acknowledge the sabotage. Instead, you start documenting every single interaction in silence. You wait until they've built a mountain of evidence against themselves, thinking they're getting away with it. Then, when the timing is perfect, maybe during a big performance review, you drop the facts on the table with zero emotion. You solve the problem of sabotage by letting your enemy hang themselves with the rope they thought was yours. A king's moves are always masked. Machiavelli taught that a prince must be a fox to discover the snares, and a lion to terrify the wolves. You should never let people know what you're really doing until it's already done. You're at a point where you're planning to quit your job, start a new business, or leave a group. Most people can't help but brag or drop hints because they want the ego hit of looking important. Don't. You keep showing up, doing your work, and smiling like everything is normal. You build your empire in the dark. By the time you finally make your move, the game is already over. You solve the problem of interference by making sure no one knows there's a race until you've already crossed the finish line. You must also master the strategic retreat. Most people think that winning means never backing down. That's how you get killed. If you're in a fight you can't win, or a deal that's going south, don't stay and fight for your honor. Honor doesn't pay the bills. Machiavelli warned that a prince ought to have no other aim or thought, but war and its rules and discipline. Sometimes the best rule of war is to walk away and live to fight another day. You get out of a losing situation by cutting your losses early and without apology. You don't explain why you're leaving. You just vanish and regroup. Finally, every move you make must be finished. Machiavelli said that men ought either to be well treated or crushed. If you do a half move, like half apologizing or half committing to a project, you leave yourself open to being bitten later. If you're going to fire someone, do it. If you're going to ignore someone, do it completely. If you're going to build something, put your whole weight behind it. You solve the problem of lingering threats by ensuring that when you move, the result is final. No loose ends. No, we'll see. You act with the cold certainty of a ruler who knows that his shadow is enough to keep the peace. You don't move to be busy. You move to be dominant. The fourth thing is to realize that money isn't for buying toys. It's for buying your freedom. Most people treat money like a scorecard for their ego. They buy the car, the watch, and the house just to prove to people they don't even like that they've made it. Machiavelli warned that nothing makes a prince more hated than being rapacious and usurping the property and women of his subjects. But the inverse is also true. Nothing makes a man more pathetic than being a beggar in his own life. If you are dependent on a paycheck, a boss, or a favor to keep your lights on, you aren't a king. You're a hostage. Imagine you're in a duel or a partnership where the other person is treating you like garbage. They're making unreasonable demands, disrespecting your time, and talking down to you. Your instinct is to get angry, to shout, or to quit in a blaze of glory. But you can't. You look at your bank account and realize you only have enough to last 2 weeks. You have to swallow your pride, nod your head, and take the abuse because you're broke. To get out of this trap, you have to stop seeing money as spending power and start seeing it as staying power. You solve the problem of being a slave by building a war chest, a stack of cash that sits there for one purpose, to give you the power to say no and mean it. A king's wealth is his fortress. Machiavelli noted that a prince should, above all things, keep his hands off the property of others. But he also knew that a ruler who is poor cannot defend himself. You're offered a big opportunity that looks amazing on paper, but requires you to sell out your values or work for someone you know is a snake. Most people jump at it because they're addicted to the lifestyle they've built. Don't. You live like a ghost. You keep your expenses so low that no one can figure out how much you're actually making. By keeping your burn rate tiny, you make yourself impossible to bribe and impossible to threaten. You solve the problem of being controlled by making sure your needs are always smaller than your bank account. You must also master the art of the invisible asset. Most people want everyone to know they have money. They wear the labels and post the vacations. This is a peasant move. It marks you as a target for wolves. Machiavelli said that the vulgar are always taken by appearances, and the vulgar will always try to take from those who look rich. A king keeps his true wealth hidden. You invest in things that don't show, skills, land, or private accounts that no one can track. You get out of the trap of being a target by looking ordinary while being extraordinary behind the scenes. When people think you're just doing okay, they leave you alone. When they realize you're a king, it's because you've already bought the land they're standing on. Finally, remember that money is a tool of war, not a reward for peace. Machiavelli taught that a prince must never let his thoughts stray from the exercise of war. Your money should be working for you even when you're sleeping. If you're just trading your hours for dollars, you're still a servant, no matter how high the hourly rate is. You solve the problem of exhaustion by turning your money into soldiers. You put it into things that grow, things that produce, and things that give you leverage. The ultimate goal is sovereignty. It's the moment you realize that if every person in your life turned against you tomorrow, you would still be fine. You don't bow to the boss because you don't need his check. You don't laugh at the big shot's bad jokes because you don't need his connections. You act with the cold, calm confidence of a man who owns himself. You get out of every social and professional cage by realizing that as long as you own your money, you own your choices. And a king who owns his choices is the only one who truly wears the crown. The final thing is to accept that these 4 pillars are not separate tools. They are the 4 walls of your fortress. If one wall is weak, the whole castle falls. You can have a war chest full of money, but if you can't control your mouth, you'll brag your way into a trap. You can have the presence of a king, but if you have no strategy in your moves, you're just a loud target waiting to be hit. Machiavelli taught that fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force. In the modern world, force doesn't mean violence. It means the relentless discipline of your own character. Imagine you've spent months building your security and mastering your silence, but then a crisis hits. Maybe a partner betrays you, or a major project fails. Your old self, the scrambler, wants to panic, to vent on social media, or to send a long, angry text to get even. This is the final test. The moment you react emotionally, you've demolished your own fortress. You get out of the cycle of failure by seeing every crisis as a training ground for your sovereignty. You don't let the world see a single crack in your armor. You solve the problem of chaos by being the only still point in the storm. When you combine a locked-down mind with a silent mouth, calculated moves, and a full treasury of money, you stop playing the game of others and start writing the rules for everyone else. To carry yourself like a ruler, you must stop asking for permission to exist. Most people are waiters. They wait for a boss to give them a raise, wait for a friend to validate their ideas, or wait for the right time to act. A king doesn't wait. He creates the environment he wants. The world is a vacuum of power. Most people are terrified of responsibility, so they look for someone, anyone, to tell them what to do. If you don't fill that vacuum with your own vision, someone else will fill it for you, and they will use you as a brick to build their empire. You solve the problem of being used by becoming the person who uses every situation to their advantage. The advice is simple. Be a fox to see the traps and a lion to scare the wolves. This means being smart enough to know when someone is lying to you, but strong enough to make them regret it if they try to cross you. You don't need to be a jerk or a villain. In fact, being polite is often the best mask. But underneath that politeness should be a cold, hard boundary that no one is allowed to step over. You get out of the trap of being a nice guy by realizing that true kindness requires power. A weak person isn't nice. They're just harmless. A powerful person who chooses to be calm is the one who truly commands respect. In the end, power is about ownership. You own your time because you have the money to buy it. You own your reputation because you have the mouth to protect it. You own your future because you have the mind to plan it, and you own the room because you have the moves to dominate it. Stop explaining. Stop complaining. Stop begging. Build your fortress, sharpen your blade, and start acting like the crown already belongs to you. Because in this world, if you don't act like a king, the world will treat you like a pawn. If you're still watching, it means you're tired of being a pawn in someone else's game. Most people will click away, go back to scrolling, and let life happen to them. Don't be most people. Comment crown below. If you're committed to mastering your mind, your mouth, your moves, and your money this year, stop being invisible. If this message hit home, hit the like button to signal that you're taking control. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Stop watching. Start ruling. I'll see you in the next one.